Rose lay there, eyes half closed, her body melting under the intoxication and heat. Michael sat beside her, his eyes never leaving Rose's face, sweat rolling down her smooth white forehead and disappearing into the corner of her hair. Rose's breath gently wafted into the air, the faint scent both sweet and seductive, making Michael's heart flutter. Welcome to the Secret Love Tales channel. If you love engaging and emotional love stories, please come to our channel. Here we will bring you stories full of surprises, touching, and engaging. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any interesting stories. In today's video, we would like to send you a story called Mother's Secret. Please follow along. In the quiet suburbs, a modern 3-story house with a shiny black iron gate and a neatly trimmed garden always stands out among the streets. This is the home of a family of 3, Mr. Michael, Miss Rose, and their 17-year-old son named Jack. But no matter how beautiful the outside of the house is, there are always invisible gaps inside, emotions that are difficult to express in words. The sound of an expensive car engine rumbled in front of the house and then quickly stopped. Mr. Michael got out of the car with a shiny suitcase, a neat suit hugging his strong body, a serious face like it was carved from stone. As a successful businessman, he often went on business trips abroad, leaving Rose and Jack to fend for themselves with their daily lives. "You're leaving again?" Rose leaned against the door, her voice trying to stay calm but unable to hide the sadness on her face. "Yeah, this time it'll probably be a few weeks. The project in Singapore is having problems. I have to go there to handle it," Michael said as he pulled his suitcase into the car, not paying much attention to the disappointment in his wife's eyes. He always thought that money was enough to make up for everything, including love. He only knew work. Rose sighed but finally kept quiet, just watching him leave like many times before. The iron gate closed, leaving a heavy silence in the space. Rose walked back into the house and looked at herself in the large mirror in the bedroom. Her skin was still white and smooth, with few wrinkles compared to her age of nearly 45. Her jet black hair was neatly tied up, highlighting the sharp features of her face. Many people said that Rose didn't seem to age at all, but only became more and more attractive over time. For Rose, adolescence was not only about changes in needs, but also the time when she wanted to live more for herself. Office work is no longer just a source of income, but a place where she seeks freedom and self-worth. Every morning, Rose chooses a new outfit. She never wears the same dress during the week, which makes her colleagues both admire and envy. She opens the large wardrobe, her hands gently running through the neatly arranged dresses. Today, she chooses a tight emerald dress with elegant nude high heels. She knows she is beautiful, and that confidence helps her stand out from the crowd. The eyes of her male colleagues at the company sometimes make her feel that she is still attractive, but those are just fleeting moments, unable to make up for the loneliness in her personal life. While her mother is busy preparing for the working day, Jack lies on the bed, scrolling through his phone with a focused gaze. He opens a website that he knows he shouldn't see, but his teenage curiosity cannot stop. "Just a little look, no one will know," Jack muttered, his eyes flashing with interest. The phone screen reflected his young but curious and stubborn face. Rose's footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jack quickly turned off the phone and pushed it under the pillow, his heart pounding. "Jack, come down for breakfast," Rose called from the kitchen door. "I'll be right down, Mom," Jack replied loudly, trying to make his voice as normal as possible. He stood up, looked at himself in the mirror, and smiled softly. He was tall. His face showed the lines of adolescence. His black hair was neatly cut, but deep in his eyes was the confusion of a teenager struggling to find out about himself. Breakfast was laid out on the dining table with familiar dishes, toast, fried eggs, and a glass of cool orange juice. Rose sat down and watched her son devour his food, unable to help but feel worried. The changes in Jack's personality recently made her feel more distant from him than ever. "Jack, how are you doing in school? Is there anything you need me to help you with?" Rose asked, trying to break the silence. Nothing, Mom, I can take care of myself, Jack replied. Without looking up, his eyes still glued to the phone screen placed next to the plate of food. Rose frowned but didn't ask any more. She knew her son was growing up and needed his own space. However, the feeling of helplessness because she couldn't understand him made her heart sink. After breakfast, Jack put his backpack on his shoulder and walked out of the house. On the way to school, his eyes kept following the girls in his class. Every time he looked back, his imagination became more and more fertile. He wanted to learn more, experience more, but didn't know how to talk about those things with anyone, especially his mother. Rose stood by the window watching her son's figure disappear around the corner. She wondered how long it had been since she had actually spoken to Jack, how long it had been since this family had lived together but not really understood each other. Outside, the sun was high in the sky, shining on the spacious but cold house. The day had just begun, but Rose and Jack both felt like they were living in separate worlds that they didn't know if they would ever meet. Stepping into the office building, Rose immediately became the center of attention. The jade pencil skirt hugged her slim body, the high heels accentuated her elegant but attractive appearance. Every step she took was a perfect combination of confidence and style that made admiring eyes unable to leave. Her colleagues, especially the men, could not hide their admiration when Rose walked by. Soft compliments rang out behind her. Sister Rose is really getting more and more beautiful. I wonder how she keeps her figure and always stands out. Rose heard it, but she just smiled slightly. These compliments had become a part of her life, like an invisible layer covering the emptiness and loneliness that she did not want anyone to see. In the office, the atmosphere was bustling as everyone prepared for a new project. Rose put her bag on the table and opened her laptop when a mischievous young voice rang out from behind. Sister Rose is so pretty today. No one in this office dares to compete with you. She turned her head and met the bright eyes of Michael, a new 25-year-old employee with a handsome face and a mischievous smile. He stood there with his arms crossed in front of his chest, as if waiting for Rose's reaction. Rose adjusted her loose hair on her shoulders, her eyes shining with a bit of amusement. You're so good at saying this. You'll definitely be very successful in the future. I'm just telling the truth, Michael shrugged, his smile becoming more mischievous. It's a pity I was born a little later than you, otherwise. Rose laughed, a gentle but meaningful smile. It should have been a simple joke, but the way he said it, the way his eyes sparkled as he looked at her, made Rose feel something different. He was not like the other men in the office, not overly flirtatious, not pushy. There was a youthful naturalness to Michael mixed with a bit of daring, as if he wanted to conquer and explore Rose as a mystery. That afternoon, the two of them sat down to finish the project report. The sounds of typing on the keyboard and the sound of flipping through documents made the space come alive. At first, the distance between Rose and Michael was still polite, but little by little, without knowing when, that distance gradually narrowed. Every time Michael bent down to hand over a document or moved the mouse on the screen, she could feel the warmth from his arm, and sometimes they accidentally touched each other. Rose felt her heart beat faster, something she had not experienced for a long time. At first, she thought it was just a coincidence, but then she realized that those moments were not completely random. Done. Michael leaned back in his chair, smiling comfortably. Sister Rose, I finished earlier than expected. Should I buy you a cup of coffee? Rose hesitated slightly. This invitation was not simply a polite gesture. In Michael's eyes, she felt the anticipation and expectation. Yeah, a drink is fine. Rose nodded, trying to keep her voice calm. The two walked into a small cafe near the office building. The space inside was cozy with soft yellow lights and melodious music coming from a small speaker. Michael politely pulled out a chair for Rose to sit and gently ordered 2 cups of coffee. Do you like this cafe? It's not too crowded but comfortable enough, he smiled, his eyes never leaving Rose. She nodded slightly, feeling light-hearted after a long day of work. Although a bit shy at first, the atmosphere quickly became open. Stories about work and personal life flowed out naturally like flowing water. Rose always looks full of energy. "I don't understand how you work so well and still look so fresh," Michael said as he took a sip of coffee, his eyes filled with admiration. Rose laughed, stirring her coffee. "It's not always like that. Sometimes I get very tired, but I'm used to it. Work is my passion." The coffee shop was still warm and quiet, the gentle yellow light shining down, making the space seem strangely peaceful. After a few polite questions, Michael suddenly fell silent. His eyes became distant. Rose noticed that and asked gently, "You seem to be thinking about something?" Michael smiled faintly, his eyes filled with sadness. "Actually, there are some things I haven't told anyone at this company. But I think if I can, I want to share them with you." Rose nodded slightly, listening patiently and calmly, although she was suddenly curious about what this young man would confide. "Before I had a relationship, she and I had known each other for more than 3 years and were about to get married. But then everything changed when she met a rich man. He had money, power, and of course things that I couldn't give. In the end, she left me and followed that person." Michael spoke sadly, his eyes unable to hide his regret. Rose was silent for a moment to let Michael's story sink into the space before answering. She felt touched, a little sympathetic for the young man sitting in front of her. At the age of 25, Michael had it all: handsome looks, confidence, and talent. But behind that, he carried the pain of betrayal, something that no one could see through his strong appearance. "I'm sorry to hear this. Love is so unpredictable, isn't it? Sometimes people think they've found the right person, but it turns out to be an illusion," Rose said in a warm, sympathetic voice. Michael smiled slightly, but that smile still couldn't hide the sadness in his eyes. "I admire your family so much. Your husband is successful, your son is a good student. The whole family must be very happy. I think if you had a family like that, you wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore." Rose fell silent when she heard Michael say that. She looked down at the cup of coffee in front of her, the heat from it rising up hazily like the tangled thoughts in her heart. After a moment of silence, she decided to open up, even just a little. "Thank you for the compliment, but actually my family is normal, not as perfect as you think. My husband is always on business trips, rarely at home. My son is growing up, and the distance between mother and son is also growing. Sometimes I feel lonely living in a big house. Full family meals or evenings chatting together. Now it's just a memory," Rose said in a low voice, clearly feeling the anxiety that she had hidden for a long time. Michael looked at Rose with sympathy. "You understand. Sometimes people have all the material things, but lack the most important thing: love and closeness." The two continued to talk, sharing their secrets, and from there a deep understanding gradually formed between them. Rose no longer felt the age gap was too big, and Michael also felt that Rose was not only a charming woman on the outside, but also a deep person, sensitive to true emotions. From that day on, when they got home, they often texted each other on the phone. On a Saturday evening, the company held a party to celebrate high sales. This was an important event, and Rose knew she needed to change her style to suit the party. Today was not a working day, and she was no longer a busy woman with her daily work. Rose chose for herself a seductive red evening gown, a tight-fitting yet elegant design. The dress had off shoulders to reveal her slim shoulders and a high slit to accentuate her long, slender legs, accompanied by metallic high heels. Her every step was graceful and attractive. Her black hair was neatly tied up, leaving a few strands of hair hanging down gently to frame her elegant face. Entering the party room, Rose immediately attracted all eyes, not only because of her gorgeous appearance, but also because of the confidence and natural charm she exuded. Her male colleagues could not take their eyes off her, but there was only one particular gaze that made her feel a little confused. Michael stood from afar, looking at Rose with eyes of admiration and admiration. Rose at today's party was not just a colleague, but like a proud, charming, and gorgeous flower that made it difficult for others to touch. "Sister Rose, "You are really beautiful today." Michael stepped closer and whispered as the two stood next to each other at the party. "Thank you, everyone is beautiful today." "Not just you," Rose smiled back. But her heart was a little disturbed when she felt Michael's eyes on her. The party lasted for a long time. Everyone raised their glasses to celebrate and laughed loudly. Rose immersed herself in the jubilant atmosphere of the party without any hesitation. She laughed and talked to everyone in a friendly manner, making anyone nearby feel the comfort and positive energy spreading without any distance or reserve. Rose and her colleagues raised their glasses one after another as if they wanted to hold on to each moment of complete joy. Then came the singing part. Rose did not hesitate to step onto the stage, took the microphone with confidence. The lines that rang out from her were not just musical notes, but also fragments of memories of her vibrant youth. Her voice was deep, sometimes hoarse from the beer, but contained a passion for life that seemed to have never faded. "Rose sings really well. You only look 30 years old," a colleague joked, causing Rose to smile back in delight. Michael still silently followed Rose without taking his eyes off her. Every time Rose smiled, he felt an indescribable feeling well up in his heart, not just admiration but also a desire to get closer. The party ended at 11:30 p.m. Everyone started to leave, but Rose had drunk too much and was lying on the chair tiredly. Michael looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to her, so he decided to step closer. "Rose, let me take you home." "You can't go home alone." Rose looked at him, her eyes blurred by the alcohol, but she still recognized the concern in Michael's eyes. She nodded gently, unable to refuse. Michael called a taxi, but on the way back he realized he didn't know Rose's address. In his confusion, he decided to take her to his apartment, a small but cozy apartment. When the taxi stopped in front of the small apartment building, Michael carefully picked Rose up in his arms and brought her into his apartment. The apartment wasn't big, only about 70 square meters, but it was neat and cozy. He put Rose on the sofa, carefully took off her shoes, and gently wiped her face with a wet towel. Rose mumbled something in her drunkenness, sometimes laughing, sometimes sighing softly. Living alone is so lonely. Michael paused, looking at the woman in front of him. He felt the weakness and hurt hidden deep inside her. A feeling of pity and a bit of indescribable excitement rose in his heart. Michael walked out to the living room, took a light blanket to cover Rose, but when he was about to turn away, Rose gently grabbed his hand. Her dreamy eyes looked at him pleadingly. "Don't go." Michael stood still when he heard that sentence. His eyes widened in surprise. Rose in her drunkenness still held his hand tightly as if he left. She would fall into a bottomless void. "Stay with me. I don't need you to earn too much money. I just need you," Rose mumbled. Her dreamy eyes seemed to be talking to herself in a dream. Her voice was gentle, mixed with sadness and longing that only someone who had been alone for a long time could understand. That sentence hit Michael's heart straight. He knew those words weren't meant for him, but for her absent husband. But why did they make him feel so choked up? In front of him was a woman who seemed strong and perfect in the eyes of others, but now she was weak and pitifully lonely. Rose lay there, her eyes half closed, her body melting under the intoxication and the overwhelming heat. Michael sat beside her, his eyes never leaving Rose's face, sweat rolling down her smooth white forehead and disappearing into the corner of her hair. Rose's breath gently mixed with a faint scent that was both sweet and seductive in the air. At this moment, Michael's heart was wavering so hot. Rose whispered in a voice as small as a breeze, forcing Michael to lean closer to hear clearly. At that moment, Rose's warm breath blew past his ear, causing his body to tremble slightly, as if an electric current was spreading throughout his body. Rose moved slightly, her slender hands accidentally touching his arm. "So hot." The words rang out softly but seemed to awaken something deep inside Michael. Her hand touched the zipper on her side, gently pulling the fabric down, revealing her pale skin under the dim light. Everything seemed to blend into the intoxicating atmosphere, making his mind gradually become dreamy, unable to distinguish what was real and what was an illusion. He reached out to lightly touch Rose's hand as if to retain the last bit of consciousness, but Rose did not avoid it. On the contrary, her hand gently squeezed his hand, a gentle squeeze that made his heart surge with chaotic emotions. In that moment, Michael leaned down and placed a soft kiss on her forehead as if to soothe the heat that was burning him. The scent on Rose's skin lingered, warm and gentle, making his mind disappear. He did not know what he was looking for: comfort, a moment to escape reality, or just the warmth of a kindred spirit in the long night. His kisses slowly stopped at Rose's lips and went further like a person lost in a storm of emotions that could not turn back. The dim yellow nightlight cast down, darkness filled the room, leaving only halos of light on their skin. The space in the apartment seemed to freeze, only the rapid breathing of two bodies blending together. Rose lay on her back on the soft sofa, her back pressed against each line of the mattress, feeling every trace of warmth from Michael's body pressing down. Rose's hands tightened on Michael's shoulders, pulling her closer as if afraid that if she let go, everything would disappear in this dark night. Their lips found each other instinctively, both strong and eager, lips touching lips, teeth touching teeth, not gentle at all. Their breaths were hot, ragged, and urgent, their heartbeats pounding in their chests. Rose pushed Michael deeper into the sofa, her arms reaching into the hem of his shirt, pulling quickly as if wanting to erase all layers of separation. Rose did not resist, but instead hugged Michael's neck, pulling him deeper into her arms. Every movement became extremely strong, as if this was the first and last time they could be together like this. No one knew how long they had been passionately together last night, only remembering that after the burning touches and rapid breathing, both were exhausted. The alcohol gradually faded, and they fell asleep in each other's arms on the soft sofa. The early morning sunlight penetrated through the curtains. Rose stirred slightly and woke up. The slight pain in her body reminded her of what had just happened. Intense, bold, and instinctive. But strangely, her heart was not confused. Instead, she felt warm and peaceful. In the kitchen, Michael had woken up early. The sound of stirring the pot of porridge rang out softly, simple but surprisingly thoughtful. When Rose walked in, he turned around and smiled gently. "Have some porridge to ease your fatigue." Rose looked at Michael silently, feeling a gentle warmth behind the strong appearance last night. She smiled and whispered, "This is just between us, okay?" Michael smiled back. "Don't worry, it's my secret." From that day on, the messages between the two became more frequent and closer. Rose realized that she was young again. Her soul was awakened after many years of silence. That night was not only a secret, but also a fire of rejuvenation that warmed her heart in a way she never thought of. After that first sublime meeting, Rose and Michael quickly fell into a whirlwind of intense emotions. They made appointments to meet more often, each time like an escape from the suffocating reality. The afternoons became a precious time that both of them craved. Sometimes they went to Michael's apartment, sometimes they went to discreet hotels. Each time was a new discovery, both exciting and furtive. One day, when Rose and Michael got out of a taxi parked in front of a hotel called Than Lich on the corner of the street, they didn't know that from afar Jack had accidentally seen them. The boy had just returned from a trip with his friends when his eyes accidentally caught the image of his mother intimately holding hands with a young man. There was a hint of confusion in his eyes. He couldn't be sure if he was seeing things. "I must have seen things wrong," Jack thought to himself, but still tried to step closer to confirm. However, when he got there, his mother and the man had disappeared behind the hotel door. Doubt crept into Jack's mind, but in the end, Jack had to push it aside, thinking it was just a strange coincidence. One day in the middle of the week, after many meetings in strange places, Rose and Michael decided to change the atmosphere. This time, Rose invited Michael to her own house, where memories of her husband, which had faded over the years, were still present in every corner. This bold idea made both of them both excited and a little scared. The house was strangely quiet when Rose opened the door. The noon light filtered through the curtains, spreading gently across the floor. Rose's bedroom smelled of wood and clean linen, but today it felt different in Michael's presence. Rose sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes hesitant for a moment, but quickly erased by Michael's longing gaze. He stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder gently but firmly. "Are you okay here?" Michael whispered, as if to check one last time. Rose just nodded, her eyes heavy with emotion, then pulled Michael down beside her. "My son is studying and won't be back until tonight." The bed that had once been the place where she and her husband shared happy days was now the setting for another story, a story of betrayal and the desire to find oneself in a lost place. Ladies and gentlemen, what will happen next in the story? It will certainly be very dramatic and surprising. We hope you will watch part 2 to feel the appeal of the story. And now, I would like to say goodbye and see you in the next video.